A huge foreign policy week for the United States. Russia said it's ready to negotiate a possible prisoner swap for WNBA star Brittany Griner, who was sentenced this week to 9 years in a Russian prison. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi ignored angry threats from China by visiting Taiwan. And President Biden announced the killing of one of the masterminds behind the September 11 terrorist attacks. Joining me now, Congressman Krishnamoorthi. He accompanied Speaker Pelosi on her Asia swing, and Max Boot, a National Security Studies Senior Fellow for the Council on Foreign Relations and a Washington Post columnist, I should add. Congressman Krishnamoorthi, let me start with you. Just the Russian foreign minister said that Russia is ready to discuss a prisoner swap for basketball star Brittany Griner and Paul Whelan. How likely do you think is that swap to happen?
I'm very hopeful. I think that the American negotiating team, so to speak, has put a substantial offer on the table for a prisoner swap. I'm hoping that the Russians don't foul it up with a counteroffer in bad faith. But absolutely, Brittany Griner and Paul Whelan have been wrongfully detained, and they need to come back home.
And Max, what do you think? What do you make of the Russians saying they're ready to discuss and the likelihood that a swap could happen?
Well, clearly the reason why they arrested Brittany Griner in the first place was because they needed a bargaining chip. I mean, we should not make the mistake of thinking that Russia is a normal country with normal courts. The courts do, in cases like this, what Vladimir Putin wants. And clearly what he wants is a bargaining chip for the release of Viktor Bout, this Russian arms dealer. There's been reports that the Russians are actually asking for more releases. Clearly, we're dealing with a terrorist state, and unfortunately, we're probably going to have to pay the price for getting Brittany Griner and Paul Whelan, the former American Marine who's also in prison, getting them out of Putin's gulag.
Congressman, let me talk to you about another sort of American adversary with a small a, China. You just traveled with Speaker Pelosi on her trip through Asia, including to Taiwan. Was there any concern China would retaliate while you were on the ground?
There was concern, but I think that the two main objectives of the trip were first, to reassure our allies, partners, and friends in the region, including Taiwan, that we were there with them. And under the Taiwan Relations Act, we are obligated to support Taiwan in its self-defense. And then the second objective was to increase our economic ties, especially in light of the passage of the CHIPS Act last week, which has really excited our partners and friends in the region to shift a lot of their investments from China to the United States, especially in the fabrication of semiconductor chips. And Taiwan, indeed, many of its companies have already pledged to invest $25 billion in fabricating these chips in the United States, and we're looking forward to seeing more of that happen.
Max, I'm just wondering, did China make a mistake by threatening not just the Speaker of the House, but that congressional delegation of which Congressman Krishnamoorthi was a part?
Well, clearly the Chinese threats backfired because they did not cause Speaker Pelosi to back down. And I think Speaker Pelosi and her delegation, they have every right to visit Taiwan and embattle democracy and to show support for Taiwan. I'm just not sure that this was the right time to make that trip. And I think there are good reasons why President Biden and his national security team did not want Speaker Pelosi to go right now, because our number one focus right now, Jonathan, needs to be the crisis in Ukraine. We need to be focused on defeating this Russian war of aggression. We don't need to be starting another crisis with China over Taiwan right now. We should be, in fact, working to separate China from Russia so that China does not wind up providing more support for Russia's unprovoked war of aggression.
Congressman, let me get you to respond to what Max just said, your response to what he said about the timing of that trip.
I respectfully disagree with Max. There would never be a good time, according to the Chinese Communist Party, for us to ever visit Taiwan. And in fact, what's happening in Ukraine is all the more reason why we need to strengthen our alliances and partnerships to prevent what happened in Ukraine from happening in Taiwan right now.
Congressman, I'm double checking your committee assignments. I thought you were on intelligence, but you're the Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence. But still, I'm wondering, what does the killing of one of the masterminds behind the September 11th attacks, Ayman al-Zawahiri, mean for the war on terror?
Well, I think that it was another blow to al-Qaeda and others who have masterminded the attacks, not only for 9/11, but on the attacks on the embassies in Kenya and Tanzania, the USS Cole and others. I think that it also demonstrates that we still have over-the-horizon capabilities with regard to Afghanistan, even 1 year after our exit there. On the other hand, I am concerned that the Taliban continues to harbor al-Qaeda operatives like Zawahiri and others, which would obviously violate the spirit, if not the letter of agreements that they had entered into with the Trump administration and others in Doha, leading to our departure from Afghanistan last year.
And Max, I'll give you the last word here, just in terms of what does this mean? The killing of one of the masterminds behind one of the worst terrorist attacks on U.S. soil. What does that mean for the war on terror, but also American security?
Well, it's clearly a good news story because it shows our global reach. It shows our ability to track down and strike the perpetrators of terrorism even decades after the fact. But on the other hand, as the Congressman pointed out, there's also some bad news buried in this story, which is the fact that 20 years after 9/11, you once again have the leader of al-Qaeda living in Kabul under the protection of a Taliban regime. And it's not just him. There are hundreds of other al-Qaeda fighters in Afghanistan right now. So I think what this suggests is this war is not going to end anytime soon. I mean, these are good victories, but we've taken a lot of terrorist masterminds off the battlefield, including, obviously, most famously, Osama bin Laden. And unfortunately, the threat continues. And the only way to really do something to change it fundamentally is to change the way that a lot of Middle Eastern regimes run and to address some of the grievances that lead to the rise of terrorism. But as we saw in Afghanistan and Iraq, that is really beyond our power. So we do what we can, but we can't really do enough to end the war anytime soon.
Max Boot, Congressman Krishnamoorthi, thank you both very much for coming to the Sunday Show.